happy and may you be free of struggle. So, today we are talking about thinking greater than your pain. If you've ever heard of Joe Dispenza, he talks about thinking greater than your environment. And I have been listening to Joe Dispenza for decades now, and among others, many others. However, when I went on my journey, one of my greatest realizations was that I had to think greater than the pain that I was in at the moment. Because if you don't think greater than the pain that you're in, you keep repeating the same kind of pain. And mourning your spouse, it's unlike any other journey, because that's not something that just goes away overnight. It doesn't get fixed overnight. And even down your journey, you can go creating life again. You can go and life can be fine, and you can find your joy again, and you can do all those things. But on this grief journey, your heart is so involved when it's your spouse. The person that you slept with for 28 years in my case. People are married for 30, 40 years, and then their spouse dies, and it is hard. And that is why we have got to think greater than the pain that we're in. Because if we don't, we will continue to repeat the pain and repeat the cycle. And I will give you an example. Last night, I was dreaming, and in my dream I was crying. And in my dream I was crying for my spouse who's gone in the physical. And I was crying, and I was crying, and I was among people, and I could care less about anything. I was crying in the dream. And there was closure, and there was a sense of peace, but it went from one scene to another scene to another scene, and every scene it went to, I was crying. And in one scene, his family was there, and everyone was around me, and I was just crying. And then in another scene, I was at a church, and there was a bunch of people, and I was still crying. And then in another scene, every scene I was crying, and I was able to end the crying, woke up in the morning. I didn't wake up crying, but I woke up and I knew what that meant, because I've been on my journey long enough to know what things signify. And it meant that I was releasing more of the pain, the hurt from losing my spouse. Because he was killed in a car accident from one day to the next. And not that it matters how they leave, the pain is still there. When you truly love this person, and you were gonna make it to the end. We were ready together 28 years, lived a very wonderful, happy, wonderful, joyous life. We were just that couple that was gonna make it all the way to the end. And we did. And what I had to do was during my journey, I used tools that intuitively came to me to help me think beyond my grief, to help me think beyond the pain. I used these tools. I created my own practices. I took all the stuff that I had within me from the years of studying that I've done. I took that and I used it. I transformed it. I transcended it into something usable to the grief that I was going through in my journey of mourning my spouse. So you can think greater than your pain. You can think greater than your environment. It certainly does become a choice. And if you can get yourself beyond that, what happened to me is I started doing that along my whole journey. So by By the third month of mourning my spouse, I decided to end the struggle because the practices that I was doing was changing my now future reality, because I was thinking greater than the pain. I was thinking greater than the environment experience that I was in. I knew that someday I would have to accept that my spouse was gone. I knew that when I was ready to end the struggle, that acceptance would come easy to me. I knew that somewhere along the line, there would be a place for me to be able to help others mourn consciously in a quicker way. And a lot of people don't like when you say stuff like that, because there is no quick fix to grief. No, there is not. I'm still going through that journey. But let me tell you, if you can allow the journey to completely transform you, do a 360 on you, and you can think greater than your pain, you will get to a place where peace abides in you, where this universal intelligence completely has your back because you have your own back, where the God of your understanding, whatever it is you believe in, completely supports you in the way that you need to be supported. So I have always created greatness in my life, and I've always known how it's done. I learned through many hard experiences that I, in fact, was creating everything in my life. And then when I learned that, I eventually learned how to ask, to receive, and my whole life transformed when that happened. But my point is, true character is built in the toughest of times. It's easy to be happy, joyous. It's easy when things are going good. But when things are going hard and life experiences come and want to knock you out off of your feet, this is when you put the tools, the practices to work. This is where you are stepping into that person you have been creating all of these years. This is when it happens. It happens when you need it. You begin to create yourself. I began to create myself out of necessity, recreate myself out of necessity. And along my journey, I no longer responded like the old me would respond. So when my spouse died, I already knew. I had already decided on conscious mourning. Even though I didn't know how, I didn't know what, I didn't know anything. All I knew was it was going to have to happen. All I knew was that I would write the book Conscious Mourning as a tribute for my spouse, as my journey to help others through their journey. I knew that. And that has not changed. And the book is done. And now I'm just editing it and letting it unfold as it unfolds, and it will be published before the end of this year, perhaps even September. But my point being, it is not your typical mourning book. This book is coming from a place of knowing that universal intelligence, the force, the source within me, that part that's greater, the greatest part of me, made these choices during the hardest experience in my life. And yes, losing my spouse so far has been the hardest experience of my life. And I know that that's the hardest experience of my life. Maybe not someone else's, but of mine. Because death takes everything to a whole new level. And there's nothing you can do. You can't change that. That is what it is. So, to those of you who are mourning your spouse, and those of you who are consciously aware of your mourning, this is for you. This is not for those of you who want to stay and struggle for 10, 20, 30, 40 years. This is not for you, because you won't understand this, and that's okay. You're not here. This is for those of you who know that thinking greater than your pain, thinking greater than the environment you're currently in, is what it's going to take to get you through this huge loss in your life. And when you are ready, the answers always show up for you. And that's what happened for me. Thinking greater than the pain and trusting in the invisible force that is there and is always there for us. Have a great Tuesday.